Hey, hello. I would like to welcome everyone. I'm Elizabeth Start, the director of the Michigan Festival of Sacred Music, presenting the Connecting Chords Music Festival this fall. Our festival is very different this year, as so many events are. But back in June, we decided we really wanted to try and present events that still gave a way of experiencing music together in some way, and also we decided we would like to keep our money as much as we could in Southwest Michigan as far as our artists. And we've had some wonderful events thus far, some of them outdoors, migratory music at the Kalamazoo Nature Center, where we had 5 groups from the Kalamazoo area who represent different cultural heritage, and also an event at the Dark Sky Park in Cass County, where Josh Holcomb entertained a large crowd with his violin and looper. And we also had 3 pop-ups on the mall. We have a wonderful collaboration with the Kalamazoo Institute of Art Resonance Project involving 8 local composer musicians whose music is available on our website for listening now, and soon you will be able to see the exhibit live at the KIA and appreciate the music in that space. We also long ago started working with Beth. I mean, I wanted to bring Beth Bradfish here last year for our festival, and we had a little trouble making things connect to bring some of her pre-existing pieces here. I've enjoyed some wonderful things where you just get to sit there and feel and hear the music and affect it by your movements, and it's just really, really cool. And what worked for us this year is we actually have an entire installation, this whole room at the Kalamazoo Valley Museum, which is Beth's work. And it also is set up so that when people can go through it, and that will happen sometime in the future, the public will be able to come in and interact with this and hear as they move around and touch things, how that affects the sound. And I've already been lucky enough to be in there and play with it with my cello and see how that gets affected by the sound. So this is all about the background behind that exhibit. And we have Lexie Schroeder Kobb from the museum here, who has been our wonderful contact and facilitator, and also festival board member, and of course Beth Bradfish, who is the artist behind the art, behind the light behind the light. So I will turn that over to you guys, and we'll just hear about how this came about, what the challenges were, what it all means, and how much fun it is.
Thanks, Betsy. I was really looking forward to this opportunity. My name is Lexie Schroeder Kobb. I work at Kalamazoo Valley Museum as the Assistant Director of Programs and Education. And it's really an honor to have been part of this project and part of this festival. It's amazing what has been accomplished with it safely during this time of COVID, and it gives my soul joy. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this. So I think what I'd like to start off with is, Beth, I'd like to really just hear more about what is the light behind the light. I find a personal challenge trying to describe this project to my colleagues and friends. Like, I want people to understand my excitement about it, but it's so hard to describe. Can you tell us in your own words, what is this project?
Okay, thank you, Lexie. And thank you, Betsy, for inviting me. I'm just so thrilled, and I'll be talking about that as we go along, that especially in this time for artists, it's a time where a lot of us are silenced. So this has been just wonderful to be able to get up and work on something, and now it'll be shared. So I'm thrilled. And Lexie has been just a wonderful support, greeting me at the door. We're all masked and we're very careful. We're very few people in the museum, but we charged through the season and got this done. So Light Behind the Light is it's a sound installation, and it's a sound sculpture, and it's actually an instrument. It can be played. And I think before I go into too many details, it would be just great to see a little clip, and in this clip we'll see Betsy and then Mike Weiss performing in it, and they actually are interacting with the instrument itself. With Betsy, you'll see there's a little mic that's attached to her cello, and that mic actually goes through the system that's controlling the sound on the screens, and Betsy actually interacts with that, and she is totally improvising with the environment. She just came in, listened, and started playing, and that's really what we'll be seeing, is that first interaction, and then the same with Mike. So let's look and listen. Okay, so that gives you a sense. Mike was totally playing the screens to create his performance there. So there are 4 screens, and we saw Betsy between 2 of them. Then Mike is, during the performance that'll happen, Mike is between the next 2 screens. There's 4 lanes that when people eventually visit the sculpture, they can walk through, and each lane has a different sound. And if you happen to touch the screens, there will be an interaction. You'll hear that. And there are different ways that you touch it. It's a percussive instrument. So I thought Mike did a lovely job of demonstrating that. And when we do our performance, then Betsy will be performing a solo, Mike will be performing a solo, then they'll do a duet together, and exploring what the screens can do and what they can do. And what I hoped would happen did happen with Mike and Betsy, and that is that it would become an instrument, and that the room itself would become something that they could respond to. So there is sound coming from the screens, there's sound coming from the windows. There's a line of windows in the back of the room, and then some windows on the side, and all of those are resonating. And then there's 6 speakers in the ceiling, and those are resonating sound, and then there's the video.
Would you like to tell us a little bit more about how the idea of this project developed and came to you?
This came about when Betsy invited me, and then in June, it became clear that we were going to actually attempt to do this, and I was so grateful and excited to go forward. And I had just moved into a new studio here in Michigan, and I walked in, and the studio was basically a blank slate, and I knew I wanted to work on this project, and I didn't know what would come from that. The room was empty, but there's this bar across the top. And the day before, I had gone into a hardware store, and I'd seen some beautiful material. It was basically the material we use for our screens that are on our windows. And a good friend of mine, Celia Greiner, who also helped me with this project, she does sculptures with that material, and I had always wanted to hear how that would sound if I could make that into something. I'm very interested in sounding things. So I got a piece of that, and I hung it in my studio across that bar. And the other thing I had in mind is I wanted to do something that had to do with this time. And I was naturally drawn to the screen, but the screen too, I realized, represented our experience, especially in the spring and the summer, that we're quarantined and we're behind windows, we're behind screens, and I really wanted to echo that. And so that was part of my intention. So I started working with these screens in my studio, and there's a little clip here, and it shows you the day when I realized that this could work, that I actually could make sound come from these screens, and we could make them into an instrument. yeah, so that was the moment when I thought, okay, this could work, and I started designing what it might be.
That's really exciting. It's fun to see the reaction that happens there and get a better understanding of how that's working. But it's still pretty mysterious. Could you tell us a little bit more about the mechanisms that are enabling
Yeah,
this sound and percussion to take place?
sure. So you saw in that little video of me in my studio that there were some objects on the screen. So there's a microphone. There's a little tiny microphone on the screen. So it's picking up what actions are put on the screen. And then there was another little object, looks like a huge spider on there, and that's called an exciter, and that can actually put sound into the screen, so the screen becomes like that's an exciter, and that pushes sound into the screen so that it becomes a sort of speaker. Now it's a very limited speaker. I had to experiment with a lot of sounds that I could push through it. I ended up with a few percussive sounds that I created mainly in nature, but then I make some adjustments to them. And then that other little dot over to the left there, that's the little microphone. So it's that combination of pushing sound in, capturing sound, and then when you interact with it, the sound you create by interacting with it. And yeah, okay. So there's this shows the lineup of, well, 3 of the screens. There's 4 altogether. And there are hundreds of feet of wire that are connecting all those things to the gear that runs it. Can we look at the next picture? Thank you. Okay, here's the glass wall at the back, and if you look at those little dots towards the bottom, those black dots, those are the exciters partially covered that make those screens a speaker. Just like I make speakers out of the screens, I made speakers out of the glass. Now the glass is a much thicker, much more reliable material, so it really captures the sound in a more reliable way. So I count on 8 of those windows to carry a lot of the sound that's coming out of the speakers and even what the musicians are doing. Yeah, there's another image of, you can see all the wire that has to go through here. And the next image, please. This is some of the electronics that are running it. So I know I always am interested in how artists run these things. So for those who are interested in that kind of thing, that's Max MSP that is running everything. It's running all the screens, and it's not running the video. I'll talk about that in a second, but it's running all the screens. It's processing what the musicians do and puts it all together through one place. And that's all in the back, like where the Wizard of Oz is, behind the doors in the back. That's running the video from the top. The video was something that I hadn't originally planned on, but it was thanks to the staff at the museum. I got into this room, and the museum staff was so helpful, just in the early planning stages of where could this happen and how could it possibly be hung, and just all the possibilities. And they were so generous and so thoughtful. And we finally found this one room that really, I was told met the specifications, and it did beautifully. And it had one other thing, and it was this wonderful projection unit on top. And I remember I was in there with Tom House, one of the people on the staff, and he said, "Do you want to use the video?" And I said, "Ooh." And that just opened things up, because it really brings the light behind the light and that movement. And it is, Betsy, all Western Michigan. I shot this in my little town of Union here, in my backyard. And so it's very Western Michigan. Yeah, so.
Thank you, Beth. That's amazing. I think it's really fun to get that peek behind the board there too, that you won't see that when you visit the museum. You won't get to see the electronics that work behind the scenes. So it's really fun to see that in the video here. But you will see all of those little exciters and things running along the base of the walls and the screens. And I was wondering if you had any other things you'd like to share with us about coming up with this concept for this piece.
Uh, yes, the the idea of light behind the light, because Lexi knows I've had a couple of things come to me along the way. It was all with the idea of this. This is a very special time. It's a tragic time that none of us will ever forget. But as we all adapt to it, and of course, as human beings, we have to adapt to it through our relationships and how do we as relational beings deal with this restrictive environment. And I found that certain of my relationships deepened, and it's been a wonderful experience, totally unexpected. And so I somehow wanted to convey this, that there is something beautiful about this in the tragedy of it, but that we can get closer to each other. It came to me one day. It was one of those like waking moments when I felt like there were these Japanese shoji screens that move open, and there's light behind them. You see the light through the rice paper, but they suddenly open, and there's this amazing light, and it's almost more than your eyes can take in. And so in this little video, I wanted to use this to sort of show there's this moment, yes, when the light comes through. And so that was it. It was light behind the light, that there is something that we can't exist without that light and without being touched by what is beautiful and by what we love. And so that was the inspiration, and I was so happy to have the video available to really fully express that.
It's lovely. It really comes together, and the way it plays through the screens in the space
Yeah.
that are then being played by the musicians, it's very compelling. So we're seeing some video footage that's part of the installation process. So how did this part of the installation come together? There was a lot of work to make this happen.
Yeah. So that's nice to show that beneath us, and I can explain. You saw my moment in my studio, and I played around with that. I experimented with it as much as I could. I worked out all my wiring problems, and then I realized that I couldn't hear anymore in my studio that would make sense. I had to be in the room and start working there. And Lexi was so generous, and the people at the museum, because you aren't open and you had to get special permission from me. And so I started working, I think it may have been in July, certainly in August until the present, for at least 2 days every week, to get this installed. And I had to test the sound. It was constantly learning. Maybe we can hear a little bit of this with Mike, because he started bowling. Yeah, there was no way I could have known that if I hadn't been there. And actually each step, having Betsy and Mike come in and try them out, I couldn't know those sounds completely. I had tried to test those out, but it takes musicians who have been, it's in their soul, all their training, to come in and pull those sounds out. So what were some of the other things? Oh yeah, let's look at a few more of these little images here. This just shows how one of the early tryouts of the screens. And here you see the silver, the silver of you see on your summer window screens. We ended up using some warm lights on them.
Let's see here. It sounds like the museum was supportive of the project. I can say that I certainly took a great pleasure in having this become part of my experience the last several months. it hadn't been planned as such a large project initially, but it kind of took on a life of its own over time. Was there anything more that you wanted to share about that process?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you because we got to a point where I also knew that I had to get the at least some kind of a hem in those screens to know the sound a little better. So there's Tom House helping with the hundreds of foot of wires. This was this was Lexi's project with me. She helped me put the first hem in so that we could really pull these screens and start sounding them. It was a huge project. We spent a few days on that. So yeah, so the museum was just terrific and it was fun to have you there to work with.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I learned so much from the process. What do you hope that people will experience when they come to visit this sound sculpture?
Um, I hope I hope that someday, whenever that is, that people will be able to interact with it. I love to think that I love the experience of sound and being involved with it. And that's what I love to offer to people. Not everybody wants to be involved and touch things and such, but for those who do, it is something that you can work with and make sound with. And I had hoped that musicians would come in, as Betsy and Mike are doing, and create with it. And that's I just look forward to it. We'll be doing the final performance this Thursday, and then it'll be available to people. And then when the museum opens, I just look forward to people enjoying it and being part of it. And for those people who don't like to be in the midst of all that or have to deal with all that, then just enjoy looking at it and seeing how other people are interacting. And
Thank you, Beth. You bring up an interesting topic, and that is the musicians involved. Not only does the sound sculpture create unique sounds and experience by itself, but we actually have this interactive quality. Betsy, I was wondering if you could tell us more about that experience as a musician.
Oh, well, I could have played with that all day. I think I think when I went in, the idea was just to see how I would interact with it, what I could do with the bow on the screens, which I'm getting better at, and just how the sounds that I produced, how they would get taken in and processed and come back to me. And it was just, you produce a sound, you hear a sound, you respond to it, that turns into something else, it layers onto things. It's just sort of this endless support and response and feedback that you can keep adding to. And yeah, like I said, when I stopped, I just stopped because I thought, well, maybe I just shouldn't be going on for like 25 minutes. 20 is probably enough for just trying it out. But we do have some of that footage, and yeah, it was a lot of fun to work with.
That is so fun to see. And all of those trials that took place and the testing of what happens if we make this sound, what happens if we play our instrument this way, or touch the screen, or touch it harder, or here or there. That process is fascinating, but we're coming up on the day when the performance will take place, when the performance with the musicians and the sound sculpture will be recorded. So I just wanted to ask, both of you, what do you look forward to with the performance?
I'll start in here, just getting to play with that again, and also with Mike with percussion, because we have we got together briefly Friday and did a little experiment together, but this will, every time we play with it, it's going to be different, and it's just be a lot of fun doing that, and seeing how we what we pull out of the sounds we're hearing to respond to, and where that takes us. And it was funny because in that uh, time that I was playing, that we had the examples from, I I was actually just responding to the sounds for quite a while before it was like, oh yeah, there's the screen. Then you did see me hitting the screen and scraping the screen, but there was so much to respond to before I even touched the screen. So I look forward to playing with it more. Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing. I mean, it's so exciting. Yes, I never knew if any of it would work, and to see that so far it's working, and to hear Betsy say that is just truly touches me. And this has just been a real gift to be able to be part of this and let this happen for all of us.
Well, thank you both so much. And thank you for giving us a peek behind the light behind the light. Um, so last question to Betsy and Eric, do we have a date for when our viewers, for when our Connecting Chords Musical Festival participants can view the digital performance? It's a one-time only event, right? This isn't.
No. It will be available, but it will be a little ways down the road. So the wait time is these days. November doesn't feel very far away anymore. But we are doing the performance and recording it this Thursday, and then we're actually honored to be featured as one of the quarantine concerts on Chicago's Experimental Sound Studios series. And we're going to be on that on November 21st. And that performance will be shown, and also probably some of this footage from tonight, so that people who are witnessing it then can also learn a little bit about how it was created, and where it is, and things like that. And and hopefully soon other people will be able to come in and play with it. And we've always already talked about how to make it safe in these days, so that you're not actually touching the screen, but maybe chopsticks or popsicle sticks or something like that, so that people get their own little beaters and can take those home with them. But yeah, so it's really exciting that we're going to have that exposure to the Experimental Sound Studio series.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the public interacts with this sound sculpture when they visit Kalamazoo Valley Museum when we reopen. So the museum, when it does reopen, will require registration in advance through our website. So be sure to visit the museum's website and register for your visit to come and experience the sound sculpture live in person. Beth, I'll go ahead and give you the last word here before we wrap up and say goodbye. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Thank you. I hope people come and enjoy it. And thank you, Lexi. Thank you, Betsy, for including me. And enjoy it.